أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. 12 months on from our first interview, I'm delighted to have President of the World Federation, Alhaj Safder Jaffer, with me once again. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
So we're in the brand new WF House as part of Hujjat Village. It feels fitting that the first events held here were a meeting of the Executive Council, the Extraordinary Conference, the first Youth Conference, the opening of the International Center for Islamic Research, and the Khoja Wall. That's a lot in a very short space of time. How do you feel?
Yeah, overwhelmed. It is a lot, but we thought that the entire global leadership of the community is all converging in London. We were almost 90 delegates. So it was only right to get everything done at one point in the new WF house. So overwhelming, lots of work, lots of effort from our staff and volunteers and office bearers. But it has been, I think, a great achievement, alhamdulillah, in the history of this organization.
How was the building itself received? And this is obviously the opening of a project that is massive, both for London and WF. How did the delegates receive the building?
Yeah, so I mean, this Hujjat Hairfield village was very well received. People hear about it, people hear about the costs, but when they come and get a feel of this entire complex, the feeling is overwhelming. We got a lot of positive feedback from the councillors, delegates, invited guests, other members even of Hujjat who had come here for the first time. Obviously, they all came to the WF house because all the programs happen within this house. But you get the feel from the other places as well that this would be the ultimate center for the community and the wider Shia community in London as well, and a place where we could even have outreach and invite others of other faiths also to come in and enjoy the benefits of what we offer.
So this year we had the very first youth conference. What was the thinking behind that, and how do you think it went?
It was the first youth conference that the World Federation organized. We had a youth network there some 15, 20 years ago, but it was disbanded on the basis that local Jamaats and regions would pursue this goal. But after 15, 20 years, what is clear is that the youths are not as engaged with the World Federation as they should be. We need the youths in every denomination of the work that we do, from volunteering within our departments all the way up to leadership. So it was extremely important to get youths from across the globe together to redefine their value proposition and their input into the institutions. So what we did is we opened up applicants from all 6 regions, working with the regional federations to ensure that we get the youths from across all denominations within 6 regions. Alhamdulillah ta'ala, we had more than 60 people here, youths from all different regions who participated on 2 intense days of workshops, deliberations. And what was profound about it is that the youths came up with their own input and their own suggestions on the way forward, and they were provided a platform at the Executive Council meeting. And again, you will see on the YouTube how overwhelming that was, how delighted the councillors were to receive the youths, to get their input, to see that they are now going to be part of the World Federation and the workings across the globe. So an action plan was put together that the youths have set up a task force, and inshallah at the next Executive Council meeting, which is going to be taking place in Pakistan, most likely in Karachi, the youths would then provide their input on the way forward with the clarity of how they are going to support the global institution and the regional institutions in moving forward. So really delighted to see the input. They were so energetic. They actually presented to the Executive Council the challenges that our youths feel today. Why are they disengaged? The challenges vis-a-vis the faith and ensuring that our youths preserve their faith, and what are the challenges that we need to provide support for them to overcome, and how they can be engaged within the institution. So overall, really, it was a great event, and hats off to the youths who organized it themselves, We devolved it to them, and they really worked hard and came up with something that went beyond our imagination.
So alongside the youth conference, you had the executive council meeting.
Yes.
This lasted for a day and a half,
Yes.
after which you then had the extraordinary constitutional conference. It's not often that these will come back to back. Tell me about these last 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. So look, I mean, we haven't had an executive council meeting for the last 7 months, so it was overdue. But at the same time, the last conference had passed a resolution that there is a need to review the SOP, the standard operating procedures for the election of the president, as well as looking at the constitution. With the elections imminent next year, it was absolutely necessary now to hold this. A 2-year mandate was given to the Constitutional Review Committee, and the 2-year mandate actually was supposed to end in June. So we had to organize that conference by any means, and hence we organized the conference, but we thought we should have a preamble to the conference with the Executive Council meeting, because councillors were coming anyway. And hence we had the Executive Council meeting, and then that followed with the extraordinary conference. Initially we were very nervous, we just didn't know what to expect. I mean, this is a constitutional event, you know, these events take place once in many years. The last one took place in 2010 in Birmingham, so we were almost having this after 15 years, almost 14 years. The Constitutional Review Committee came up with a lot of proposals and changes to the existing constitution. So there was a lot of intense debate for 2.5 days. The leadership of the community globally debated every aspect of it, from the standard operating procedures to the structure, to the way WF needs to evolve, to the reconciliation requirements, to the dispute resolution team, to the composition of the trustees. So you can imagine there is so much that was discussed over 2.5 days. But alhamdulillah, I'm so delighted that the delegates supported the chair and the office bearers to try and converge. And we were very successful in achieving 3 major resolutions that will go into the history of this community as an important milestone. The first one was that we achieved a new SOP, a new standard operating procedure, meaning that we can now hold the next elections at peace, that hopefully, inshallah, there should be no issues. Within that, an important change was that the regions would hold their own elections. It was always the WF Secretariat, under the Secretariat, the Electoral Commissioner that held the elections previously, but that created a lot of confusion and tension. So now the regions have taken the onus and ownership of organizing the grassroots election for the president within their own region, using their own processes. So that devolved the authority to the regions. That was a major milestone. Fixes to the issues in the SOP. We had a few issues at the last election that led to disputes and unfortunately litigation as well. Those were fixed. Alhamdulillah, after intense discussion and many meetings, we passed a unanimous, almost unanimous resolution that the way forward was the new SOP. Alhamdulillah, all the 6 regions supported that, and that was a profound moment that we did not have disagreements on that. So that was the first resolution that we passed. The second resolution that we passed was the arbitration clause. With disputes, there is an issue of arbitration. So when the election results are announced and the candidate is unhappy with the results for any reason, there needs to be a mechanism to resolve it, and hence the arbitration requirements and the appointment of the arbitrators was discussed, and we passed a resolution providing a mandate to the next executive council to elect arbitrators for the forthcoming elections. So that was another major milestone in my opinion. And the third one, of course, was that all this hard work that the Constitutional Review Committee led by Arif Asaria worked on, so much effort was done. They came up with a range of documents and lots of intense issues should not go into waste. Whilst there was lack of convergence on the proposed models, there was acceptance of a number of elements of changing the composition of trustees, or bringing the dispute resolution team in place, of ensuring that there is advisory role within the constitution, of aligning the conference with the structures rather than executive council in the middle, and all these different permutations of the law of the land. And the conference recognized that you can't just throw that out. We need to continue. It's an evolving process. The constitutional review needs more time. And again, we passed an overwhelming resolution allowing the current CRC team to continue and to co-opt more members from within other regions so that they can have a much more robust approach in the next at the next conference. So I think these were key milestones, and to me the bigger milestone was the unity of the house. A house that entered a divided house, a house that had very diverse views where regions did not see eye to eye with each other, but when we left the room we were united, we saw eye to eye, we managed to find compromises, we managed to give and take, and alhamdulillah, to me that element of unity was something that was historic and sends a message to the community that we are unified. Alhamdulillah.
It's been 12 months since our last meeting. We discussed various elements of your manifesto that were also discussed at the Exco. Let's start with education. What developments can you report over the last 1 year?
So I think at the Executive Council meeting, the 5 core strategic pillars were discussed, and the focus on 2 key components: economic upliftment and supporting spiritual growth of the community. These were discussed in an intense way. So from those we had the discussion on education, discussion on housing, discussion on microfinance loans on one hand, and when it came to the spiritual growth, there was a discussion on the International Center of Advanced Islamic Research, the academic platform. There was discussion on Islamic education activities, the Madrasa Center of Excellence, the new Quranic curriculum, the online Hawza, so on and so forth. So plus the dispute resolution, many other components. So it was an exco that was quite rich with content and substance to discuss in terms of the way forward.
Housing was a key element we discussed. Since then, we've had the Pakistan floods. How has this impacted your strategy?
Yeah, so look, economic upliftment has 3 pillars. The first one is education, because when you educate, in the long term, you remove or eliminate poverty. Alhamdulillah, I was pleased to announce in my set of community address at the Exco that at this moment in time, alhamdulillah, no Khoja Shia Ishnashri is deprived of good quality primary, secondary and higher education. We have achieved that goal. When we met 12 months ago, that was not the case. 12 months ago, we had people in India, we had students in Pakistan who necessarily did not have access to higher education, university education. Primary and secondary was almost there, almost done. Alhamdulillah, today after 12 months, with our focus on education, with the increasing budget on education, now any Khoja Shia Ishnashri who wants to study in Pakistan and want higher education loans, they get it. The same in India. And in Africa, that was already achieved a while back through Africa Federation. And we also have enriched the Zainabiyya child sponsorship scheme. So in education now, alhamdulillah, there is no issue within the Khoja community. Of course, there are fine-tunings and requirements to support. But when it comes to the wider Shia community, we have increased our support on the Zainabiyya child sponsorship, where we have almost 5,000 children now that are supported from a few hundred, in fact, just under 1,000 last year. So that's a massive increase that we are the leading Shia charity when it comes to promoting education. So that's education. When it comes to housing, which is the second pillar, because a lot of your disposable income goes into rent. And we have approximately 7,000 Khoja families across, particularly India and Pakistan, and to some extent in Africa, where the needs of housing are dire for the lower segment of the community, for the lower to middle segment of the community. And we have just embarked upon a few housing projects in India. So we started with refurbishing support in a number of areas in Gujarat, and now the India Federation has provided us 3 projects for housing in Vartej and in Bhavnagar. And alhamdulillah, we got a lot of support from the Executive Council to work on it. We also managed to raise around £150,000 right at the Exco to commence some of that work. in India, alhamdulillah, as well. And that's as far as housing is concerned. And as far as microfinance is concerned, there's some good work going on in Pakistan. We need to replicate that in other parts of the world.
There are challenges getting donations to that part of the world.
Yes.
This was also highlighted during the meeting.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So going back to your question on floods, I mean, let me clarify that our community was affected in a limited way, mainly in Badin district in Sindh. We immediately resolved that issue on housing. But for the wider Shia community, who are not necessarily members of the World Federation, but we are obliged to support them. We are right now working to develop more than 2,000 homes for them. These are homes for people who are completely displaced. Floods completely destroyed and ruined them in its entirety. They were literally living on their farms in a very difficult environment. We provided them initially shelter, we provided them food and tents, and many other charities also joined us. And now we are working on the housing support. The issue now is the remittance of funds. UK charities are increasingly being scrutinized. Globally, there is a move to monitor how the funds are remitted, which is the right thing to do. But that is leading to challenges of sending funds in particularly countries like Pakistan, India, and possibly Africa in future. So obviously there is a concern that if World Federation does not open offices in Pakistan, in India, in Africa, in the near future with our NGO status, it will become extremely hard to send funds to other charities with all the regulatory environment around it. And hence I have emphasized very hard at the Executive Council and continuously to regions, because constitutionally we need the permission to allow us to open offices in India, to allow us to open offices in Pakistan, not offices, but actually NGO status equivalent. So we can open a bank account and be able to transfer funds and provide support to our local charities in these countries. So that, I think, is the way forward. We have not optimized our NGO status. And one of the impediments is that we have yet been unable to open our regional hubs, which I believe if we don't do, there is a danger that in the long term we'll not be able to provide funds in areas that we are supporting right now.
For those that don't know, can you explain these dynamics where you need the permission of the regional bodies to be able to open your office?
Constitutionally, the regions or the local Jamaat must allow the World Federation to open an office. A resolution was passed a few years ago that we were allowed to do that in India. We are still working towards that. We passed another resolution at the Ras Al Khaimah Exco to open an office in Australia, because sending funds, then if the Australian Federation wants to send funds, they have to send it to London and then we send it to the donor countries, whereas if we have local registration NGO status, we can send it direct to areas. So that has already happened. But now we need to focus on Pakistan, because there is a significant commitment that we are providing in Pakistan. We yet don't have the status. So we are talking to Pakistan Federation to see how we can facilitate that. And at some point we need to do it in Africa as well.
Last year we discussed rising inflation. The cost of living has now become a crisis for so many community members, including in the West. What is being done to support these people?
Yeah, our focus has always been on the poorest segment of the community. World Federation is not in the business of supporting business and SMEs. That is the work of the business entrepreneurial groups, such as the KLF Forum, such as JIBA. These are the forums that provide business support. But our obligation is towards the poorest and the most vulnerable in society. And for that, we have been focusing in third world countries. We have been focusing in the East. We have been focusing in Africa. We have been focusing in Asia. We have been focusing in India, in Pakistan, in Iraq, in Yemen, in war-torn countries. And that has always been our focus. But what has surprised us, actually, is that we are beginning to see economic difficulties in the West. And when we discussed with COAG, it was pretty clear that there are a number of families who are struggling to meet their basic needs at home on a monthly basis. Some of them even struggling with food, which is quite shocking to us. Initially, we couldn't believe that. And then COAG set up the hardship fund, the Ali Imam Radha hardship fund, which I thought was a very good move to support the most vulnerable of our community members. And World Federation obviously supported COAG in this initiative. Of course, the onus is on on COAG and the Simco if there are such situations in the West. I hope it is not sustained. Maybe the war in Ukraine is causing this. Maybe there are other factors. And I hope that that gets resolved, because it has always been our understanding that in the West, the governments provide social security support. So there's nobody who goes hungry. Whereas if you look at the East, there are people who don't even have a meal. But when I hear that people go to food banks and they have problems here, then that clearly is an eye-opener for us.
A key discussion this year is the census. Why is this so important for the WF?
Yeah, one of the major papers that was presented at the Exco was census. This is a new team that has been set up under the able leadership of Brother Shiraz Walji. A very dynamic team has been put together with actuaries, with economists, with statisticians, with credible people, with people who understand community needs, to come up with the first global Khawaja Shia Ishashi Muslim community census in the world. Of course, other regions, Jamaats have had census. Africa Federation had its own census a few years ago. Jamaats have had census. But this is a comprehensive census across the globe. And there is a need for that for two reasons. One is just to understand our demographics. How many are we globally? You know, what is the male-female split? The demographics just gives us an insight, leading to potentially an ID card for every member, so that whichever Jamaat they go, they can easily assimilate and enjoy the benefits of membership across 150 Jamaats we have in the world. But the most important part of the census is really to plan for the future. We are now planning towards a 2050 vision of our community. And to be able to achieve the 2050 vision, we need data. We need a solid census that can provide us inputs to start planning for that. Otherwise, we are working on perceptions. And hence, this WF house here will have an office as well dedicated to data gathering. We'll have an office dedicated to census and building on big data and ensuring that the behavioral patterns are clarified so that we can meet the needs of our community. And hence, for planning, this census is extremely important. It's an evolving census, hoping that we can get updates on a regular basis, not only collecting data, but also collecting data which allows us to understand the behavioral patterns of our community, what would they like, what is their preference, so that we can then tailor-make our services, spiritual services, community services, to meet their needs.
This will obviously involve the various federations. Last year we discussed difficulties between various federations or trying to overcome challenges. What has happened over the last 12 months? Do those challenges still exist?
Yes and no. I believe we have fantastic relationship with most regions. But there are other regions where we do have friction, healthy friction, in the sense that I believe that the line between World Federation, Regional Federation, Jamaat is still blurred. Yes, constitutionally, World Federation is a strategic body. Our membership are the regions. They are the stakeholders, which means we need to provide services to our regional federations. That is the current constitution. But our ultimate beneficiary is the grassroots, and the president is elected by the grassroots. So there is that line of the president direct to the grassroots, but yet the president reports to the executive council and the conference, and that stakeholders are the regions. So what I'm trying to say is that it is good to have a connection with the grassroots and ensure the deliverables, which is done by the Jamaat, not by the World Federation. We are supposed to support the regions, to support the Jamaats, who in return support the grassroots. So what has happened, particularly with Project North Star, where 30 youths got together a few years ago and they carried out a survey, is that the grassroots is completely disconnected with the World Federation. In fact, the grassroots is also disconnected with the region. The grassroots is only connected with the local Jamaat, which is okay. But it is important that grassroots understands how the Jamaats and how the regions of the World Federation works. We should not be duplicating stuff. We should be complementing stuff. We should not be competing. We should be complementing. So we need to sit together and redefine our lines. What is strategic? What is operational? What are the needs assessments? And how do we recalibrate work that is a win-win for all parties? Where WF is strategic, provides input, the regions are able to provide operational efficiency and excellence to the Jamaats, and Jamaats able to deliver. I don't think we are there. We have a big gap of maturity. We have certain Jamaats who are so self-sufficient that they don't even need the regional federation. And there are some Jamaats who not only need the regional federation, but who also need the world federation on a regular basis. So there's a huge disparity of maturity between a Jamaat, the region, and the world federation. When we try and bring the gap closer and strengthen the regions and the Jamaats, this is where world federation became more strategic. I don't think we are there. And this is why there is a tussle and a kind of a tension that we need to ease. And the way we can ease it is to make sure that we are efficient across the board and we have a common vision that drills down. And that is why we are planning the 2050 vision for this organization. Inshallah.
We also had the opening of the Islamic Research Institute. Tell us why this is so important for the WF and what are the aims and ambitions for this institute?
If you recall last year when we spoke, 12 months ago, I mentioned about the challenges of faith in the community, the challenges of our youths who are asking very difficult questions on plurality, on issues of gender interaction, on issues of sexuality, on marriage, on relationships, on artificial intelligence, and on medical bioethics, and so many issues of the Sunni Shia issues, of our social cohesion with wider communities, or feminism. All these issues continuously to come up, and you have alternative thinkers, some call them deviant thinkers, who come and provide their own alternative views away from the mainstream faith. And this has created a lot of tension in the community, leading to our Marja, His Eminence Sayyid al-Sistani, guiding our community with certain principles of who should be invited to provide guidance to your kids from the mimbar and who should not. So that guidance remains in place, where people who have alternative views, who talk about specialist subjects that the lay person cannot understand, those things should not be recited from the mimbar. Now, what do you do in the presence of this challenge where you still have things to be discussed? So you need an academic platform, a platform that is safe, that is secure, where you have the best of experts, where people come and academically discuss that. You can't do that from the mimbar. And hence, and at the same time, the community needs to address all these challenges anyway. We are moving in a fast-changing world with artificial intelligence now taking over even the mindset of individuals, of being fit for purpose to support our spirituality of the community, to provide policy guidance to the community, and hence we set up this center. Alhamdulillah, last year we talked about it, and now I'm delighted that on Friday, 9th of June, we opened the International Center of Islamic Research here in this building, on the other side of this building, and it was opened by the representative of His Eminence, Sayyid al-Sistani, together in the presence of regional leaders, in the presence of delegates, in the presence of community workers, and particularly scholars and ulama and academics. And I'm delighted that we are moving in that direction. We already have people working on various research projects. It's only a start. This is our first year, but there's a lot to do. And now that we have moved here in Harefield WF House, where the Research Institute is, we will be organizing events where we will be discussing those subjects that have been undiscussable or are subjects that are taboo, and people are unable to discuss that in a typical center. You can't sometimes discuss these issues at Stanmore, Hujjat, or at Birmingham or any other community member. This is the place to come. And this is the place where we'll be inviting people from different denominations. This center will be open to academics, people will be open to alternative thinkers, will be open to people who are challenging the status quo. We'll be telling them, come here, come discuss it. We have scholars, we open the debate, we bring the young people, we have debates, discussions, forums, workshops in a safe environment. So that goal, alhamdulillah ta'ala, we have just started on that, and now we have a beautiful center to be able to establish and move forward, inshallah.
There were also significant discussions surrounding marriage, divorce, and conflict resolution within the community.
Yes.
Issues that have long been affecting many members.
Yes.
Why is this so important, and why was this discussed at such length?
Extremely important. We are moving in a very fast changing world. Many marriages break down because of difference of opinions. People come from a wide variety of backgrounds. Then the issue of conflicts within the communities, divorce rates are high, and in fact when divorce does happen, there is sometimes a clash between the Islamic law and the law of the land, particularly when it comes to divorce, where women are unable to divorce, as a result of which at times I have had cases where we have girls who have been unable to get divorced from their husbands for 8-9 years. Well, the law of the land gives them the divorce, but Islamically they are unable to get the divorce, and how do you close the gap? So Alhamdulillah Ta'ala, the Islamic education team has come up with a global marriage contract. Having worked with all the other regions, there are some marriage contracts already existing in Africa Federation, in Toronto. Other Jamaats also have it. We try to bring all these templates together and come up with something solid as a marriage contract that will go a long way. A lot of work has been done. Inshallah, in December, at the next Exco, we'll be presenting the template to the community. Then support for reconciliation. If there are marital issues, premarital courses where aspiring people who want to get married need to understand what marriage is, both Islamically as well as from a relationship perspective. During marriage, when there are conflicts, there is need of arbitration, there is need of conflict resolution. There is a need for continuous training, support to parents as well with their kids. So there's a whole range of issues that we need to work on, and various ideas have come up in terms of how to deal with it. Alhamdulillah, this Exco, we also published a book on how we can train people towards these areas. So this is ongoing work.
I want to change gears slightly. This was also discussed at the Exco. There is an investment fund within the WF that generates revenue. Can you tell us a little bit more about this and what your aims and ambitions with regards to this fund, but also the financial health of the WF? Financials were discussed during the meeting, and what are the aims going forward for in this regard?
Sure. Alhamdulillah, as far as the financials of the World Federation are concerned, we had a record year last year where we raised £20 million in 1 year. Of course, a lot of it to do was with the acquisition of Hairfill, but also charity funds are going up because people have now confidence that World Federation is delivering better quality, is giving better quality reports, there's more transparency, governance accounts. It was always there, but it is only enhanced and improved with risk management and other ways where we're improving, alhamdulillah ta'ala, with the grace of Allah and the support that we have from the grassroots and the donors. Having said that, we always aspire to meet our expenses at a minimum without taking a single penny from charity. We are there, we are not yet there. So right now, we don't have any admin cost, admin charge anyway. Every penny that comes for charity goes to charity. So we have to find donations to meet our expenses. Now you have to have expenses as an organization. Alhamdulillah, we have investments now. We have a foundation fund that is around £4.5 million. We have invested in properties many years ago that are valued even more now. But it's not enough. It's generating income of around 200 to 350,000 pounds, depending on which year it is and the investment incomes out there. It's not there. We need an investment fund that is much bigger than what we have now. I mean, £4.5 million or $6 million is not enough. We need £100 million to be able to not only meet our expenses, but to even have money for charity. The Abid Hemani fund of $5 million was very supportive because that provides us certain funds to support certain projects like education that are specified by the fund itself, on education, on housing, on economic upliftment. So we need to grow that, and we need to work very hard. I have no magic formula of how to get that done because donors prefer giving money for projects, but when it comes to foundation funds, somehow donors shy away from that. And whilst we have been successful in getting to £4.5 million, we have stopped at that. We need to enhance that, and that has been a big struggle and challenge, but we'll try, inshallah, continue on the journey.
You have 12 months left in office. What are your plans And do you aim to stand again in 2024?
Good question. The next 12 months, our focus will be, now that we had a manifesto where we had promised the delivery of our Islamic Research Center. We have done that, but now the real work begins, finding the right caliber scholars to be, and research students and lecturers to be part of this institute, disseminating that information out there, organizing and making sure we get appropriate research published material out there, organizing appropriate events that we did recently in Dar es Salaam. We had an excellent event that was on intellect and revelation, on wahi, aqal and wahi in Dar es Salaam, which went very well. We need to organize many more such events, interfaith dialogues, so on and so forth. So consolidating our eye care is the first project. The second area I feel we need to start consolidating is our economic upliftment on housing. I think we have just started the work on housing. There is a huge need, massive need of housing. I think there is a huge focus required. I don't think we're able to accomplish much in the 12 months, but at least we have started planting the seeds and getting a few projects started and hopefully completed also by the time we get to next June, inshallah, particularly in India. So that will continue. And on this, Madrasa Center of Excellence, other things are continuing as well. So I think these are the two key areas: strengthening our eye care and housing. If these are the two key areas of focus, the third area is operational efficiency. We need to make sure we have a solid secretariat. We don't have a CEO or a chief operating officer yet. It's extremely important that we have a solid operational individual who can then help us facilitate and strengthen our secretariat. So that's another objective that we want to fulfill. And of course, this acquisition of this house, WF House, there's a lot of potential in this place. Slowly and steadily, we need to develop this as well. So these are the key things we want to do. Of course, to ensure that the election is organized appropriately, it is done independently from Secretariat anyway, with devolving it to the regions will make life a lot easier. So inshallah ta'ala, those are the aspirations for the remaining 12 months to strengthen the current work that we are doing. The agenda is clear. As far as whether I'll be intending to stand again, community work is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The tawfiq that comes from Him. If you serve, it is for His pleasure. And if you don't get a chance, maybe this is not the right place for you. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this tawfiq that we have served in the first year. Has been very, very fulfilling. If we can continue in this way, if we can continue to see the fruits of the results, and we continue to make an impact, I will have to make the judgment in March, probably by March, when the elections timetable will be announced. So I'm still reflecting on that.
Ahsan.
Yes.
Ahsan. Thank you very much for your time. And inshallah, in 12 months, inshallah, we may meet again.
Inshallah, I hope we can meet at the triennial conference, which will be the end of our term. Inshallah.
Ahsan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alaikum salam.
And thank you to our viewers. Comment, share, and subscribe. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.